I'd like to call the May 3rd, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Please call the roll.
Barbaza. Here. Anderson.
Here.
Murray. Oh, Murray has an excused absence. Burton.
Here.
Topfest.
Here.
Smithwick Ailey.
Here.
And Chair Bobla.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Are there any objections to approving the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. And for our last meeting on April 5th, are there any changes to the minutes? Any objections to approving the minutes? All right, hearing none, the minutes are approved for April 5th. We don't have any presentations with prior notice, but we do have some public hearings. First one is for Resolution PZ 2023-010, granting approval of a conditional use permit for the development of a gazebo and deck extension within the Kenai River Overlay District located at 303 Diane Lane. May I have a motion to approve, please?
Motion to approve resolution number PZ 2023-010, granting approval of a conditional use permit for the development of a gazebo and deck extension within the Kenai River Overlay District located at 303 Diane Lane.
You can have a second.
Second.
Thank you. May we have the staff report?
Thank you. So the applicant in this project is Carla Anderson, who lives at 303 Diane Lane. And she's been working with Kelly Kekich with Gardens by Design, a company out of Homer, who has completed the application and has actually met us on site to show us the area. The applicant applied for the conditional use permit for the clearing of vegetation. And she cites that there's a lot of invasive vegetation on the site that they're trying to get rid of, and then replanting new vegetation, the construction of a 160 square foot gazebo and 260 square feet of additional decking. And the deck extension basically is going to come off their existing house. It's going to cross a depressed area with terraces you can see there in that picture, and then connect to the future gazebo. The property is located in the single family, 2-family zoning district, and portions of this project are within the Kenai River Overlay District, which, as you know, is 100 feet from the ordinary high water. At its closest, the gazebo should be about 85 feet, and the deck addition will be approximately 95 feet from the ordinary high water of the Kenai. The application that we received was forwarded to our building official, to the Department of Environmental Conservation, the River Center. And at this point, no additional permitting is required from the borough or from River Center agencies because the work is outside of the 50-foot setback area that the borough regulates. Our title 1710-285, which is the Kenai River Overlay District, requires that projects that are not exempt or that have not received an administrative permit to go through the conditional use permit process. And so that is what we have for you. We did find that within the single family and 2-family districts, all of those standards within that district are met with this application. And with regard to 1710-285, which is the Kenai River Overlay District, as I mentioned, this application is specifically for the construction of a gazebo and an addition onto the deck and walkway within the 100-foot district. At its closest point, the gazebo will be about 85 feet from ordinary high water, and the addition to the deck will be about 95 feet from ordinary high water. The clearing of mostly non-native vegetation will occur in 3 areas within the overlay district. The areas include 2 landscaping beds and an area where an old greenhouse has since been removed. And Jen, yeah, there we go. Perfect. So that photo shows those terraces, which hold essentially the landscape bed. So there's each terrace is a bed. Each one of those, they would go in and remove the existing soil and vegetation, clear it of those invasive plants, and then plant perennials. The total area of removal of vegetation will be approximately 1,400 square feet. One of these areas where vegetation is to be removed will be the site of the gazebo and the deck extension. The other two areas will be revegetated with perennial beds. Approximately 70% of the area will be revegetated with compact, non-spreading perennials, shrubs, and spruce trees. As I mentioned, we did submit copies of this application to the Gilman River Center, DEC. They were sent on April 13th. DEC had no comments. And as I mentioned, no permitting required from the River Center agencies. When we look at the specific standards that have to be met on this project, there are 8 that must be met before a permit can be granted. And I'm going to run through those with you. All 8 of the conditions staff believes have been met by this applicant. The first one is the proposed development satisfies the specific standards associated with that conditional use listed in the code, if any. So there's currently no specific standards listed within the code, either in the residential zoning district section or in the Kenai River Overlay District. We find that the deck addition is consistent with and in harmony with the intent and general standards of those zoning districts. And that single-family homes and related accessory uses are commonly permitted within this district. The second standard is that the use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan and surrounding land uses. The proposed project is in harmony with the comp plan and surrounding land uses and with the future land use map, which identifies this area as urban residential. Again, the surrounding land uses also have homes with decks that face the river. And this application is in harmony with those neighboring lots. The third standard is that the use meets the general standards of the zoning code and the intent of the zoning district in which it is located. Staff finds the standard is met and that the general standards of the code, to include the standards of the single-family, two-family district and the overlay district, are met. There are some conditions that staff is recommending to mitigate for any potential effect or for significant erosion, ground or water contamination, and any kind of negative alteration to the riparian habitat. The fourth standard is that the use shall be located and arranged on the site to avoid significant noise, glare, odor, or other nuisances and dangers. Staff finds this standard is met by itself. Staff finds that the gazebo and deck addition do not create any noise, glare, odor, or other known nuisances or dangers. The fifth standard is that the proposed development shall not significantly impair the value of adjoining properties. Staff finds this standard is met. As we mentioned, it's similar to existing residential uses, and we are not aware of any evidence that would suggest that these additions would impair property values. The sixth standard is that the size and scale of the use is such that it shall be adequately served by existing public services and facilities. Staff finds this standard is met. The proposed additions require no additional public services. As you are probably aware, the property is located in the CES response area and is served by the Soldotna Police Department. Granting the conditional use shall not be harmful to the public safety, health, or welfare. That's the seventh standard, and staff finds that that standard is met. The gazebo and deck are consistent with neighboring uses and are located 85 feet from the Kenai River at its closest point. Provided that the recommended mitigation measures be implemented, staff does not believe that the granting of the CUP will be harmful to the public health, safety, or welfare. And the last general standard is that the property where the development is to occur is current in payment owed to the city, including property taxes, sale taxes, utility bills, assessments, or has entered into an agreement with the city for repayment as in compliance with the terms of the agreement. and is in compliance with the terms of the agreement. Staff finds the standard is met. Soldotna Finance Department reported to us that there are no outstanding obligations owed to the city. We did send out 15 notices to property owners. We did not receive any comments as of the writing of this report, and we haven't received any since that time either. We didn't receive any comments from our Public Works Director or Utility Manager or our Street Maintenance Director either. So it's our recommendation that this resolution be approved, subject to the following conditions. And there are 5 conditions listed there on the screen and on page 9 and 9. The first is that the applicant must obtain a building permit to construct and use the deck and gazebo. And it's our understanding they will be complying with that. We met with them on site and they were more than willing to do that. They will provide, the second condition is that they provide for revegetation of disturbed areas no later than July 31st. The purpose of this condition is to ensure revegetation occurs and to reduce any potential runoff and erosion. The third condition is that erodible materials shall be monitored on a daily basis to ensure they are not leaving the construction site. And the fourth is that if there is potential for soil erosion, that some mitigation measures like silt fencing, straw wattles, or other BMPs be implemented to protect surface water resources. And then the last condition is that excavated fill material be temporarily disposed of on the northeast corner of the landscaping beds, which is the farthest point from the river on the property, to maximize the distance of the exposed soil and from the river itself. And that is the end of the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The public comment period is now open. And is there anybody online in addition to Charlene? Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this? Okay. I think that we're good then. With no one wishing to speak, the public comment period is closed. Are there any commission comments or questions for staff?
Commissioner Anderson here. I remember last year, John, I believe we had talked about maybe having a link or a resource on the website, Soldotna website, that would have like a reputable builders or a builders that like passed or took some education on city codes and ordinances. Did that ever come to fruition, or is there anything on there that maybe we could represent a builder, any builder who did that, and then we could say, this is ones we recommend, and it's not that we're picking them out, but they are taking our class or our quiz, and they know of our city ordinances and things like that. So we don't have deck issues like we had last year with one of those being something.
We have not done that, and it's mainly because of the reason that you're stating, that it's difficult to put names forward without implying that these people will do the work and they'll do it correctly, and that we just can't control. In addition, there are so many construction folks outside of city limits that that can be eligible to work in the city, for example, if they become licensed and bonded, depending on the type of work that they're doing. So it's just difficult to come up with an inclusive list of everyone that would potentially be out there to do it, and then not feel that we might be leading people on as to the competency of each of the builders. So that is something that we never pursued.
Yeah, I understand that. I think it might be worth maybe talking about more or exploring the options of if we came up with a 20 or 30-minute thing online that any builder could take. And then at that point, they now receive maybe our certification as far as like they've been educated in the standards and codes of Soldotna. So if you wanted to use them, they are aware of that. And then that would hold them accountable for anything in the future that if they went against it, we could say, hey, you took the class, the test, you knew what we required and you did it anyway, or didn't do it anyways, you know? I think it's worth exploring.
I will share that with our building official as well, because I know he's interested in pursuing some updates to the building code, and that might be an opportunity. And I think at some point here in the past, I shared with you that we had at one point tried to work with the Realtors Association on doing something similar with regard to Kenai River type issues. Our goal at the time was to try to get realtors to take a basic class, get credit for it, learn about the standards that are applied by both the city and the borough, and bring them into the know. And the realtors at that time were not interested. But yeah, maybe it's an opportunity for a voluntary type program where you can show you that you've taken the basic class and you know what permits you have to get and you know what those standards are, or at least who to call and ask questions of.
Yeah, I think it would just bring attention to everything we have and open book. You can't fail, but you can pass, you know, you can flip through every page we have and answer 30 questions, you know. Thank you.
I just had a quick question about the gazebo. It has a roof, right, that sheds water. It's not just a.
That's correct.
Is there any best practice for, I think, like this is an example of a good project that is coming to us in advance without having done it wrong and then begging for forgiveness, where they're going above and beyond to remove invasive weeds and all the good things. So I mean, it's a good project and I think we should approve it, approve the conditional use. My thoughts are, it's not just this like one project, it's the cumulative effect of having areas of ground that don't like receive groundwater. There's roof shed or there's asphalt or even gravel. It just changes the permeable surface area that's feeding right there into that groundwater recharge and also the river recharge. And I am not a scientist, but I spend enough time with them to know that they're really concerned about the cumulative impact of not just the one project, but if everybody builds a gazebo, you know, with close to the river, will that have a big impact? And if we approve one, we need to approve all of them to be fair. So my question is like, is there any best practice for having these non-permeable surfaces like roofs or asphalt? Like, can we ask them to add a rain? I'm not sure what my question is, but I see that you've added a couple suggestions to the conditional use. Is there, if everybody wanted one of these, is there anything else that we should be doing to make sure that we're doing due diligence on protecting the river?
One thought is, we're asking them to monitor the soil, for example, and see what's happening there. It might be another recommendation to have them, monitor the areas around this gazebo. If it does result in erosion coming down off the roof where vegetation is being disturbed and soils being exposed, that might be one thing. I'm not sure about, the idea of a rain barrel. What I worry about is someone collecting the water and then just tipping it over and so
no, I
I mean, you'd have
understand.
to have the next standard, which would be where the water is deposited at,
I was thinking one of those rain gardens. I know they have just basically like a sort of a cavity with some almost like sewage rock drainage.
yeah, okay.
As a way to prevent erosion and then also, but I think that's more for parking lots where there's oil and different stuff. So, this is a wonderful project. And it's just the question of if everybody did this, are we overlooking something that could have a significant cumulative impact on the river, which is one of our best assets in town. So that's my only thoughts. And I don't have any like things I think we should change about this, but it's just, I always pause when one of these comes across our desk because I think it's, every single project is typically like very reasonable. It's just the cumulative impact of them, is something that we have to think about and be fair about, so.
Commissioner Anderson here. With that in mind, I think like large surface areas that have gutters that localize everything, and now you have a flow, and now you have erosion towards the river, might be kind of what you're after. Would that be something that, opposed to just a natural runoff, I don't think is as big of a deal as gathering all that together and then basically a new stream out to my cutting or eroding banks, things of that nature over time. Is that kind of where you're at with that? I would think maybe. Yeah.
I'm not a groundwater scientist, so I don't really know, but I just think you consulted the river. Sorry, I'm so sorry for eating. I'm breastfeeding and it's happening all the time. Yeah, I think we've consulted everybody that we need to. Because we're sort of the last buck. And so if there's anything else that we can do to improve the project that isn't crazy, our chance to think about.
Is there any maximum size or percentage that can be, to like limit size or how
Yeah.
much coverage there can be on any one piece of property? It's hard to, it would be hard because everyone's shaped differently too, like how wide are you doing it by width or by total area?
We do have a lot coverage standard on all lots, and it's 30%. So we basically take a look at the rooftops on all these parcels and divide that by the total lot area to come up with a lot coverage. And this one does meet that standard. So and our standard at 30%, I believe, is across all zoning districts. And so in all cases, you should see, at a minimum, 70% of the lots not be covered by a rooftop.
Asphalt?
Asphalt does not count. Our definition of lot coverage is buildings.
Oh. Yeah, I do remember some conversations from the River Center folks about, the reason we have all these light penetrating grates and walkways in the city and stuff is that actually allows vegetation to grow, which keeps erosion in check and, allows for groundwater absorption. Even a deck that we walk on normally is to them considered an impervious surface, even though, it seems like it's much better than a building. To them, it wasn't actually that much better and even a gravel versus asphalt, it still changes the way that water flows, which to them is important in the big picture sense. So maybe we look at changing some of those kinds of things in the future. The asphalt is to the folks who do know about riparian stuff that that a roof is the same as asphalt, is the same as a gravel driveway, et cetera, et cetera. Any other questions or comments from?
I do have a question, not completely related to that. Mainly relates to the surrounding houses and vegetation of the bank. Obviously, variety of vegetation provides structure, support. And I like the idea of wiping out these invasive weeds because they compete with natural species. And a lot of weeds can sometimes reduce the structural integrity. So I'm kind of making a big assumption here. If the weeds have spread already on the hill and the neighboring areas look the same, with this deck and gazebo being so close to the bank, what do the other decks look like? Are they having any erosion problems due to a potential spread of invasive species reducing the structural integrity of the bank?
So within the packet materials, the landscaper who submitted the application on behalf of Mrs. Anderson took a look at the riverbank from the top of the bank down to to the river itself and stated that they did not find any invasive. They haven't spread yet down the riverbank. So that's the positive news, but she goes on to say that it's possible within the next 1 to 2 years that they'll show up there, start showing up there. Neighboring land uses in this area, this type of development is consistent in that these homes are typically between 50 and 100 feet back from the river. This part of the river in particular has some pretty steep banks. It's on a slight outward bend, so it does have potential for erosion. Typically, it's a gravel bank with a thin amount of organic matter on top holding up, the vegetation that exists there. So yeah, it's got real potential for erosion. And some did occur on a property going upstream of this, probably about 500 to 1,000 feet, a quarter mile or so. I'm trying to think, 500 feet probably. Well, we shouldn't say recently, but we became aware of it recently. And it probably occurred sometime this winter with either partially due maybe to the volume of snow, the freeze thaw, can't say for sure, but so in a nutshell, we're going by the statements of the contractor, the landscaper. We haven't seen the spread, or they haven't seen the spread of those invasives. And this is very typical development on our river. I'm not sure I answered your questions though.
Thank you.
I do have one question. We're just looking at the 50 feet and the K-Rod looks at the 100 feet. Is that right?
The borough has a 50-foot setback on all anadromous streams. I should say most anadromous streams. And we defer to them generally in the first 50 feet. Our standards basically say we follow the borough standards. And so if you want to do something in that first 50 feet, it has to be receive a borough permit, be elevated, like penetrating, all of their standards. From 50 to 100 feet is where we become involved for all permitting. And we also get involved in the other stuff too, in the closer things, but it's mainly just to say, we agree with the borough's decision. Outside of that 50-foot to the 100-foot mark is where you see all of your conditional use permits and all these requests come in. The borough generally doesn't allow structures to be placed within the first 50 feet unless they're water dependent. So, for example, a bridge is something, or a boat launch would be something that they could permit, those types of things. But putting a house typically is not something that they're going to allow.
Or even a deck. Okay. So the light permeating materials are only required in that first 50 feet?
That's
Okay,
correct.
I was
Yes.
just thinking that somehow this was an exception, but it's not. It's normal that they're doing it not light permeating. Okay.
Yeah, there's no
Okay.
requirements for light penetrating from 50 to 100.
Okay.
Are there any other commission comments or questions? All right, let's call for the vote.
Murray has an excused absence. Topfest,
Yes.
Smith Gailey,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Barbaza,
Yes.
Barton,
Yes.
and Chair Vadla.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business, which we have none. We do have new business. Resolution PZ 2023-011, recommending approval of the Binkley subdivision back replat. May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve resolution number PZ 2023-011, recommending approval of the Binkley subdivision back replat.
Thank you. May I have a second?
A second.
Can we have the staff report, please?
All right. The applicant, Segister Surveys, submitted the application on behalf of the owner of record, Pauline Back, on March 24th, 2023. The proposed preliminary plat for the Binkley subdivision back replat intends to combine 4 parcels, which are lots 22, 23, 25, and Lot D into one lot, which would be proposed Lot 22A. Lot 22A will be 2.153 acres, which is 93,785 square feet. Currently, Lot 22 is addressed as 169 East Beluga Avenue. Lot 23 is addressed as 187 East Beluga Avenue, and Lot 25 is addressed as 168 Little Avenue. Lot D has not been assigned an address. The intention of this plat is to combine all 4 parcels as they are under one single ownership. There is a single-family residence on Lot 22, which is that 169 East Beluga Avenue. It is the only structure that contains a principal use. Lot 23, which is the 187 East Beluga, and Lot 25 have no structures developed on those parcels. Legal access to proposed Lot 22A will be from East Beluga Avenue. The existing parcels are currently zoned limited commercial. The zoning to the north and east is also limited commercial. The surrounding zoning to the south and the west is commercial. Lot 22A of the preliminary plat meets all the general standards for the limited commercial zoning district. These standards, such as minimum lot size, minimum lot width, maximum lot coverage, and minimum yard setbacks, are met. Currently, neither water nor sewer are available for 3 of the 4 lots. After the replat, Lot 22A will be within 300 feet of public utilities and thus will be required to connect to municipal water and sewer per Soldotna City Code 1316-150 and 1318-100 if there is further development. This was a comment that we received from Mike Allen, the city's utility manager. We sent this plat and the staff report to other departments within the city, as well as to 37 notices. This is a large mailing. 37 notices on March 14th. No comments were received other than Mike Allen's comment about the future development of the property being required to connect to municipal water and sewer. Staff finds that the preliminary plat for the Binkley subdivision back replat meets the general standards for Soldotna Municipal Code and therefore recommends approval. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? The public comment period is open now. Yeah, come on up. And you have to hit the little, or please. Would you be willing to push the little push button? Yep, great. Thanks.
James back.
Thank you.
I was wondering about the requirement to hook up to city water. That's gonna be like a ton of money.
Is it 100? What's the hookup?
So you are not required at this time to hook up. What this requirement states is that if you were to develop in the future, if you were to put an additional unit or a business or something that required water and sewer services, at that time, you would have to hook into city sewer and water services for that additional development.
Let's see, where is that water line going? Do you know? Where would the hookup be? Off of Bink or off of this street, Binkley? Yeah.
I don't know if it's off of Birch or Beluga. It's probably off of Birch, but it's for sure, it's available off of Redoubt. I'm just not sure which is closest, but it would come from the closest point possible, which I believe is Birch.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be where the water and sewer would most likely come from.
Okay, but we're good as long as we don't install any new buildings or
Correct.
anything that
Yep, you
requires
can continue to use your existing well and your existing septic. That's not a problem. It's future development that would require a connection.
All right, is there any plans to extend water and sewer service down Beluga at all?
Not at this time, no.
And okay, well, that's all I need. Thank you.
Public comment period closed. Are there any commission comments or questions for staff?
Commissioner Anderson. When we combine limited commercial and commercial, do we make it limited commercial to be more conservative? Is that why we chose that over the other? Does that make sense? We have limited commercial and commercial here. And then we went with limited commercial on our designation. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure, what you're referring to.
So page 2 of 4. It looks like to the north says limited commercial, south is commercial, east is limited commercial, west is commercial.
Hmm.
So there's different zones here, is that not?
No, all 4 are in
Oh.
the limited commercial. So that's the orange in this. All, these-
Oh, I see. So
So-
surrounding,
yeah, we look at the surrounding zoning districts.
that makes sense. And then second question would be, I had brought up a little while ago of kind of reassessing the zoning in this area specifically. As well as maybe the city in general is probably a bigger work session, but this area is very odd. It's just, there's a lot going on. And I think we had discussed that like when the city first zoned it, like when Safeway went in or before then, or who knows, they didn't know really what they were going to do. And we just kind of grandfathered it year by year by year. And on a previous meeting about this area, I brought it up. Has that gone anywhere? Has that got any traction or?
We did discuss it and the thought is that we would look at it at a future date, most likely when the comp plan is updated, which is going to be hopefully in the next couple of years. That's when we typically look at land use zoning and redo the land use map and identify those. But at this point, we just didn't have the ability to undertake an effort like that with our other projects that were ongoing.
Okay.
That are on.
Thank you, John.
Other questions? Don't think so. Let's call for the vote.
Murray is excused. Smithwick Ailey,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Barbaza,
Yes.
Burton,
Yes.
Topfest,
Yes,
and Chair Badla.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Is there anybody, do you wish to make any other comments about any other things on your mind, your heart? Yeah, it has to go before the borough to get approved from them as well. Usually they take, sorry, I shouldn't speak without knowing for sure, but typically,
I don't think any of us can
Yeah.
can tell you exactly. I mean, it's usually a process of months, so I would guess like 4 months. This is pretty simple, pretty, standard type of thing. So it shouldn't take too long. But yeah, anywhere from 4 to 6 months is kind of common, but because this is pretty standard, hopefully it moves faster.
yeah, I mean, and you can always. Yeah, I mean, you can always just say hi to the staff who's processing the permit. That always helps. Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for coming in. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you too. All right, no informational items, reports. Can we go to council member Nelson? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've been here. I think it's been about a year since I've been to a P and Z meeting. So good to see everybody. We've been busy, a lot of stuff going on in the city. So I'll just hit some highlights here, especially from our last meeting. So one of the focuses that the administration's been doing is recruitment and retention of city employees. So you may be aware that there's a large number of city employees that are either eligible for retirement right now or imminently eligible for retirement. Quite a few in the police department, but also many other departments as well. So Administration came before the council a number of months ago with a presentation from an outside consultant, kind of giving some ideas of recruitment and retention strategies. So long story tolerable on that, basically through the work session and through some things we approved an ordinance to codify some of those things as well as clean up some of the HR code. And that occurred last meeting. So very much a focus. As I'm sure everybody knows, with employee recruitment and retention, it's not the easiest thing in the world, especially in the public sector at this point. So that was definitely an item that came to fruition and was approved. There is going to be some budget impact to that. I'm going to talk about the budget in just a minute, but the administration has started adding some of those changes in as well. We had a couple donations. I just want to shout out. An individual donated to the library for some, I'm going to massacre this, and I apologize, but like a child-friendly work session or workstation where you can have kids in a safe space while, the parents are doing things. And that was a $10,000 donation. I think the largest that anybody could recall on record for that. And then the Elks also contributed to the skating, one of the river skate events. So appropriated both of those. There was also an ordinance that was approved that approved the next tranche. There was a kind of a second tranche of COVID funding that became available through a healthy and wellness communities program. And that was approved towards Parks and Rec for some additional work. A lot of some mobile parks units, some things like maybe that could be used at Arc Lake and a few other things. So very exciting to have some of those good things happening. We also had to appropriate our first payment on the field house. So there was a partial payment this year for the bond that was approved by voters, and that money was appropriated. A couple work sessions occurred here in the last month, I think, since you last met. There was a work session on riverfront redevelopment, and I'm going to apologize, I missed that one. So I'm hoping that maybe John or somebody will fill in the details on that. But we also had 2 work sessions on our upcoming budget. So as you may be aware, the city of Soldotna does it a bit differently. It's a 2-year budget. So essentially what happens is every 2 years, we go through, administration really does all this work, the staff go through, they put the budget together, we approve it for 2 years, but there's kind of a midpoint adjustment that's put in there for things like cost of living adjustments and some of those types of things. So we went through both of those. I was not able to make the capital work session, but I was able to make the operational budget work session with the city departments. Fairly straightforward. The city of Soldotna does a good job of making sure that those budget requests are reasonable. I do want to share with everybody because it kind of shocked me. One of the metrics when we talk about recruitment and retention, there's some cost of living adjustments that go on with salaries, and the cost of living, the CPI, ask me what that stands for, but basically represents inflation, was over 8%, which I believe Stephanie said was the highest since the early 80s. So that's a tremendous impact to obviously the budgets, and also again going back to that recruitment and retention piece. So a lot of complicated things happening budget wise. I believe that draft budget is just being finalized and will be up for us next week, I think, for our first introduction and public hearing. And we had kind of a sad meeting. Stephanie Queen had her last meeting with us, and her last day was Friday. So we had to appoint Kyle as our interim city manager here for another few days until Jeanette Bauer joins us. So a little bit of a difficult meeting and an emotional one. Stephanie, of course, starting at the Economic Development and Planning Department here and with P&Z, and then of course moving up and doing good things. So certainly wish her great success in the next thing. And that's my report, but happy to stand for any questions. And those were the highlights.
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks for joining us. All right. Director of Planning and Economic Development and Planning Director, John.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a couple things. One is the Kenai Peninsula Borough introduced at last night's meeting a ordinance to reduce their planning commission from 14 members to 9 members. And Robert Ruffner, the director of their planning department, will be presenting to city council at their next meeting on Wednesday. There'll be a 10-minute presentation sharing with council what the implications are for that move. essentially, the plan is for the 9 planning commissioners to represent the same exact area as the 9 assembly members. So District 4, which Soldotna falls into, it's a large area and includes the city of Soldotna and extends north and east towards Sterling. One commissioner would represent that entire area, and that person may or may not be from the city of Soldotna, but they have to be from that district. So that is the proposal that's going to be before the assembly, and that will be on June 6th. And they're doing that for a couple of reasons. One is it's just difficult to manage 14 people. I couldn't agree more that that would be difficult, but it's also going to save them between $40,000 and $50,000 a year by reducing by 5 members. So that's what they're stating in their materials that they're hoping to accomplish. A couple other things. One is, you might remember the new homestead plat. That is the plat that was submitted to extend the right of way of Homestead Lane north up to East Redoubt. On that plat, the landowner that has agreed to sell the city a small portion of her land for that right of way extension had also platted an extra lot on it. And since that time, she has decided not to plat that lot. So that plat is going forward without that extra lot. So that's, depending on how you look at things, good or bad, it certainly takes away one small commercial lot that could be on the corner of Homestead and East Redoubt. But it also ensures she likes her privacy, and she likes the woods that are there, and she wants to maintain it that way. So that was the reason behind that. With regard to the Riverfront redevelopment project, as Dan mentioned, we did have our work sessions. I saw a number of you folks at them. We had our public engagement session where we had about 65 people attend. We had a presentation to City Council through a work session. We had a presentation to the Fish and Habitat Symposium over in Kenai, and then we met with our advisory committee as well. And what we were doing is sharing the results of our first engagement session, and then also sharing some concepts for feedback from the folks in the audience. So we'll be updating our website here probably in the next couple of weeks, showing those results from that meeting. And our consultant is taking that information right now and getting busy and actually crafting and refining concepts for further evaluation. That's the last thing I had. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, John. Jen?
There is a little QR code in front of you. If you have time to take the Soldotna's Arts and Culture Master Plan survey, it'll help we hired Ag Newbeck as consultants. It'll help them start formulating the plan. And if you wanted to take this and little flyer and put it up at your place of work, I have a couple extra for you to take with you as well. Speaking of surveys, I think the Riverfront redevelopment, they could still take
Yes.
the survey. So if you were to go to the Riverfront redevelopment website and you didn't participate in the survey from 2 weeks ago, you're still able to provide feedback, and I think you're welcome to. And we could even send out the links to both of these via email if you're
Sure.
interested.
Yeah.
And then
Good idea.
less interesting is we did send out notice of violations. We sent out 10 notice of violations in the past week for short-term rentals that were operating without a permit. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson. Thanks, Jen. John, I actually did have one question. On those new going from 14 to 9 commissioners for the borough, is that correct? Are those appointed positions, or do we have a say-so in who's going to represent us?
So currently, under the current system, their code reads that one person from each city is on their commission, on the borough's commission. And historically, the city provided to the borough a list of names for the mayor of the borough to select from. So that's how that's operated in the past. And sometimes we submitted one name, sometimes it was two, sometimes it was three, but normally it was just one name. The new system basically will be, as I understand it, that people will be able to forward their names similar as like you do. There'll be an application period, and where if you want to serve on the planning commission, you can submit your name for review, and then the administration of the borough will take a look and make a recommendation and an approval. But the city of Soldotna will not have any role in that process. Certainly, people from the city can apply, but we won't be forwarding any names to the assembly that we would prefer. It would be their process and their process alone.
Thank you.
Right, it's time for commissioner comments. We want to start right here and then we can go down.
I have no comment.
Maybe we should pop to Charlene on Zoom.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Commissioner comments, do you have any comments?
No, just welcome Dan Nelson. It's great to hear you. You were in Rotary with me and just great to see you. And have a great week, everybody.
Thanks. All right.
I just want to thank you guys for putting this all together, all the work you guys do. So thank you.
Ditto. Thank you, John, Jen, and Nelson. Appreciate it.
No comment.
Right, so you have to scan this QR code before you go home and text it to 5 of your friends. So we can get some good input on arts and culture, and then also, yeah, I haven't done that other one for the riverfront either, but it's good to do, because I think if we all add our little bit of our brain power to it, it'll be a better plan in the end. The next, with that, we're adjourned. The next planning and zoning meeting will be on June 5th, 2023 at 5:30 PM here. Be there, be square.